Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Jim and Sam Town Square. I'm Scott King. Jim and Sam fans know me from the Forbes articles, and I'm joined, as always, by multi-Emmy Award-winning television producer Chris Cangilla. This week, we're recapping week 3 of July 2023. The guy's on another vacation, but Chris, we kind of tried to come up with some fun things that, we try to dive deep. Even when they're off, we can explore some things that have happened over the years, things that are happening now.
Yeah, it's not always a good week when they're on vacation, but they deserve it. So let's get them out of the way now so we have good entertainment coming into the fall and into the winter. We also so you guys know, we do look for other people to be on the podcast, and we had some inroads with some possible guests. So maybe those will pan out.
We have some. It was a little bit short notice. Me and you have had crazy weeks, but we reached out to some people that are going to help us out. Some guests Jim and Sam fans will know and we'll love to hear from. I think we're going to get them soon for the future, maybe for other vacation weeks. But needless to say, we have some great topics here. And first, I want to say, everybody, check out Chris's podcast he does with his brother about his dad's service in the military. Our World War II Dad is the title, I believe, right?
Yeah, thank you, man. We just taped our last episode of the limited series last night, so it'll be coming out this weekend. So thanks, man.
That's awesome. I need to catch up. I always say what an amazing idea it is. So great to dive into your family when it's an interesting topic. And speaking of interesting topics, something I thought we could start with in this kind of hodgepodge show that I think the fans will like is we've been noticing Cooper, the new intern, for a little over a month, I want to say. Does that sound about right, Chris?
Yeah, that seems about right. Yeah.
Summer good chunk of the summer.
Yeah.
So that got me thinking, he's a guy. We'll dive a little deeper into him, but he's a guy that I think is game to be made fun of. They don't exactly treat him as the smartest guy in the world, but he has a great sense of humor. And I think it says a lot when they're bringing him on air constantly. So he's made his presence known. We can tell they like him. They want to incorporate him into the show, Jim and Sam and the crew there. So that got me thinking, how does he compare? How does he measure up to other interns we've seen over the years? People like Intern Reed, Alina, Soiree, of course, has quickly become a favorite, and now she's doing other jobs, and she comes back. And Intern Mike, Nico, Baby Frank, Thumbs Up, AJ, just to name of probably the vast majority, but there might be some slip in my mind. So when you hear those names and everyone has their favorites, Chris, how do you think he measures up? Does he kind of stand out from all the Jim and Sam interns already?
I do think he stands out already. Intern Mike had a lot of good comments because he has that background of being overseas and being with the ladies overseas, and Jim and Troy like to talk to him about that. But yeah, Intern Mike was great. I remember Thumbs Up. Why is he always doing the thumbs up? Yeah, so I remember all that. But I think Coop really does fit in well, and you said it perfectly. They go to him a lot, and it's not like, Sam will go, "What do you think, Coop?" He'll come out of cold storage and ask him on that. So they like to engage with him, and they like his youthful take on things.
Yeah, for sure. Like, he didn't even know which drummer was at his high school, right? Like, he doesn't know all the
the drummer from Nirvana. No one really knows who that is.
Right. So I think that this already having Cooper, we know what his thing is. We hear him on the air. I think Sam and you could say Travis, because they went through the Opie and Anthony intern, job there.
And were they both interns? I know Sam.
So I think
was Travis an intern?
As I'm saying that, I don't know if Travis was. I think when I interviewed him for Forbes, he talked about his first day, and I think he was a producer.
So he stepped right in.
I think he may have stepped right in. I should know this. It's going to bug me.
All right.
Sorry, I asked. Comments. No, but anyways, they know that whole world of working with the interns and what it takes to get on air. And I think Sam and Travis are so good at branding these interns. Like, right away when we fire off these names, Reed, they call him Thick Reed. They get the nicknames in. They find out what makes them tick. Elena kind of did it herself. She was very sexed up, always talking about sex and stuff of that nature. So she fit right in, kind of branded herself. Soraya, we know, is just so kind of quirky.
Miles above most of the that's for sure.
I think you're right. She's just so interesting and old-fashioned and hilarious and hardworking. We saw with her prep work. Intern Mike, I thought there could have been a Mike and Mike spin-off show or podcast with, Montone serving in the military and Mike. They had so many interesting takes on current events and certainly military stuff.
Idea. Yeah, good idea.
Nico,
so go ahead.
Nico, I want to give Nico a shot real quick I believe Nico was something we might be talking about later for a Man on the Street bit was what would you do for a free prize? I believe that was Nico.
I think that was his contribution.
And then go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I just it's interesting how all these guys have done so much and contributed in different ways. And what I'm most interested in hearing about Cooper is he does stand up. So I got to see. Yes. I want to see a set, and either something recorded and then they can talk about it on the show, or someone from the show goes and sees him and reports back. Maybe that would be a good thing for Montone to go do.
Just going to say that. That's why we're doing a show together. I was just
exactly.
Gonna say that.
We could produce that. Let's give it a shot.
I think so. I think this is a pitch for them because he's so great at not just production, but the Man on the Street stuff we've talked about before. And I could just picture him going, look, no one, and I know from doing it, and you've seen stand-up and work with stand-ups, Chris, that it's a thing where you're not good right away, unless you're Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle, who are prodigies.
Jim talks about it all the time. He had to really work at it for sure.
It takes a long time. So he's not going to be good. So I would love to hear some of his bits being recorded, the audience reaction, and then Mike interviewing him after on how it went. That seems like it would be such.
And if he eventually becomes good, they'll be able to play back that recording 20 years from now, like they did with Jim's stuff and all the other comedians that just stunk when they first started.
That's one of those Opie and Anthony clips that can just live forever on YouTube. That's so good, Jim's. First set when they make fun of it. Speaking of Jim, so something we keep kind of touching on, because Jim has a few times, is he's said that he's not going to sign another contract, that he's done with XM. He's kind of doubled down on it. So let's kind of revisit that whole scenario. Chris, what do you think was there something that just a couple months ago that really irked him? He's like, that's it? Or do you think it's been building up?
I think it's been building up. And if you all remember from the negotiation period with the contract, things weren't getting done. They weren't even engaging with them. So there seems to be this lack of interest in the Jim and Sam show from management, possibly. And when you have that, you don't feel appreciated. So, it's like, what am I even doing here? If they don't want us here, we could go do it. And it's so simple to do this elsewhere, as we are kind of doing ourselves anyway. I mean, There's ways to do these things and find your audience. And I think also, Jim has taken a lot of interest in these comedians that are self-releasing their sets on YouTube instead of doing it on an HBO, like, it used to be done. And I think that's the kind of thing with this. He's just kind of getting that information. So, okay, if they want to continue doing Jim and Sam and it's not on Sirius, they will have a way to do it, and it will be just as popular. And the only thing that I always see with that is it's hard to get the guests, sometimes, the celebrities that are going through. That's what Sirius really helps with, is when the celebrities are going through and they can hit a lot of different shows. But Jim has great connections with comedians, so we know the comedian group will be there.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, you look at, we talked about Sam's in-home studio, how nice that looks. And he's had, there'll be a big Netflix documentary, and he'll have the like that true crime one with the minor league hockey team. I interviewed the guy too. I can't think his name, but Sam had him in the studio like the next day or the next week or whatever. He gets wrestlers down there. He's gotten film directors in his basement there. So
you've experienced that very much when you've done your celebrity interviews, because you do them over Zoom. Sometimes you get to go to the junkets, if you will. So there is a way to do it. There are celebrities that are made available to different shows. So they'll be able to figure something like that out, I think. I
think so too. And you mentioned they talk about the lack of interest, certainly from Sirius. And we're not on the ground floor. So I don't know if it's a lack of interest, because if they weren't aware several months ago when if there was a string of guests and they kept one of them being Dave Coulier with the Alanis Morissette kind of revelation that he never talked about. Sam asked him about it in her songs that she's alluding to him. And they were making all these headlines in major publications. I think it was like New York Post, New York Times, maybe some of the Hollywood outlets that kind of cover Hollywood. So if SiriusXM wasn't aware of that, and they're not aware of, when they should turn the cameras on. It might just
Yeah.
be incompetence and not like, oh, screw that show. Because they might only pay attention to Howard for
Yeah.
all.
I think you're making a good point. Maybe it's not a conscious decision to not pay attention, like who cares or whatever. I think it just isn't top of mind.
Totally.
They just they don't even pay attention by just omission. They don't even remember that they have a show. So it's good and bad. They can fly under the radar a little bit and do the things they want to do and not get hassled. But also
true.
It's tough when you want to get those celebrities in there. You want to get them recorded. They break a lot of news with some of those celebrities. And we've talked about it before. These two guys, Jim and Sam, know exactly how to interview guests and get great information from them, have fun with them, and still allow them to do what they're there for. Sometimes they're doing to promote some items or even a show or two, and they get that stuff out there. But yeah, they are good interviewers, and that's why that stuff is successful, and that's why it goes viral sometimes.
Absolutely. And my theory with Jim, why he's doubling down now, is I think that it's kind of been building. I think he's sick of, the way their contracts are structured and when negotiations are. It's been like every 3 years, and it's just brutal, like months and months of not making a deal. Okay, make a deal at the last minute, but I'm not super happy with it. I think he's tired of that. I think he doesn't want to have to do that every few years or every couple of years. I think, not being, for whatever reason, not being on top of mind when they need something, like the damn cameras turned on when you got to know your station's audience, a particular show. Like their fans are like us. Like, they do a great interview. We love to hear it, but we also, if Jim spills his coffee all over himself, like, that should be on video.
Yeah.
They don't think of how that does on social, especially with their audience and finding other people on YouTube. So I mean, I think the camera thing really put him over. I think he's done it
in the studio
20 years at XM. So I think he is a good round number. I think he's talked about that. So yeah.
In the studio, before we beat this one into the ground, but the studio, that DJ equipment that probably is still there, they just aren't taken care of. They're not regarded as one of the best shows, when we both know, and we're a little biased, but they are one of the best shows, and you would think they'd be appreciated more, is all I'm saying.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And going with the show and what works and what doesn't work, it's interesting that I think, look, they've, obviously coming from Opie and Anthony in that universe, Opie and Anthony you have the comics, that went on, and now Jim and Sam have a new generation of comics. And Opie and Anthony I don't know if they ever had a name for them. They kind of had their own, in the light of Stern, they had their own kind of Wack Pack. You had these crazy characters, and we don't see Bobo on Jim and Sam. I think there's probably a few reasons for that. Right. And we do see Sandy Kane. I love that a couple of the kind of zany characters that used to be on Opie and Anthony will come on Jim and Sam. Sometimes feels like it's been a while, but I want to pick your brain first. Why do you think that they didn't feel a need to get in these characters off the street or bring more from Opie and Anthony on the show?
I can't believe I'm going to say this because it's not, but in a sense, it's kind of a more mature show. It's, they talk about more headlines, more political stuff. Yeah, it's still, D and fart jokes, but, it's a little bit more mature. And I think that they don't need those, tropes, if you will, to bring out the crazy person that does this or that and the other thing. Now, I loved all that stuff, but that also can get a little bit of annoying too. It's like, oh, not this person again. Oh, not that person again. So it's a fine line, I think, for them having to balance, the quirky weirdness of people, and then, that they're a little older, a little more mature.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the show kind of feels more mature. I think it's the structure. I think, like I said, it's great that they still have Sandy Kane on. But I think as much as I love hearing those people, and I think Dennis Falcone kind of fit that mold too.
Yeah.
I think we start the show with what happened to the guys over the weekend or the day before and go through some, like you said, headlines. And then I think they've kind of, as much as Opie and Anthony leaned on these now legendary comedians, Jim and Sam are leaning on a new generation. And I think kind of similar to how Opie and Anthony did it, like these guys just come in when we need Jim's out, Ian come in, or Mike Cannon, or guys just come sit and hang in the whole show. I think they know they can bounce stuff off comedians and they'll have opinions and they can be funny. I think when you have a Bobo or a Sandy Kane in studio, it's like, Okay,
Where are
they're
you
not
gonna
gonna sit in
go?
for the whole show. Like,
Yeah.
what do we do after one break or one segment? As much as I love hearing those people, I think I agree. It's not the mold of Jim and Sam and what it's become.
Yeah, you make a really good point that it's those comedians, that they've brought in. And when you think about that, that was all Jim's doing, as far as I can understand. That those are Jim's friends, people that
Yeah.
he was working with, and then people that just rocketed to stardom. And as favors, they come back, like the Bill Burrs and Florentine and those guys, and even Voss. But some of the guys come back, and Bobby Kelly. These are his friends, and they make really good guests, and so yeah, I know Jim depends on those guys and has fun with them. It's like hanging out at the comedy cellar table, like I've always talked about. That's what I love most.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of, the people that come on regularly, we don't count the comics always as guests. They're kind of just like a part of the show now. All these people that we've seen on so much and heard on so much. But I'll let you start. I'm curious, which guest that hasn't been on in a while would you like to see back?
I gave this some thought, and I don't know if there's any political reasons in there. So pardon me if I'm stupid and I don't remember why this person doesn't come on or anything. But I'd like to see Amy Schumer come on. I know she's very large here, but she was great on Opie and Anthony. She's Jim's friend. At least I think they still are friends. I would have loved to see her. I'd love to see Kevin Hart. Those guests haven't been on in a while, so I'd like to see some of them come back. We did get Bill Burr recently. He would definitely have been in there.
That says, and he's you can argue he's maybe not Kevin Hart, but he's certainly bigger than Amy, even though she's really
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're all at this top level, and so Bill did a solid and stopped by, and I know they have fun. Our favorite guest, I think I'm speaking for you, and I think you would agree, is Ricky Gervais. He's one of our top guests on there, and there's no one really bigger. I mean, Kevin Hart, sure, but Ricky has done so much and has created so much and he owns so much, that just having him in there just really gives credibility to what this show is. And so, yeah, I would like to see a little bit more of those guests that used to be on there. As far as actors or musicians, that's kind of tough. We don't get a lot of the musicians that used to come in and play, live there. Just bring the guitar and play. I would like to see some of those come back.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think it's funny because this person now is kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I would definitely enjoy him coming back, but I also understand, I think, why he hasn't been back in a while is Kevin Brennan. I think, now counting a comic as a guest, I think that there's just always, it's Sam appreciates the work, and Jim thinks Kevin's a very funny comic. He's said it multiple times. Kevin's hilarious. I think he had to just irk them with some of this turmoil and contentiousness he brings. And I don't know if maybe one time after he got really mad about that St. Patrick's Day a couple of years ago, I think he's been on, that he thought because he's Irish, he should have been on St. Patrick's Day. And I joked about it in one of the Forbes articles. But yeah, I wonder what that would be like, or I wonder if they're just like, we can't keep up with this dog and pony show anymore.
Exactly. What about the guy that used to be on Opie and Anthony, Sir Ian, whatever, that weirdo that writer? I mean, I didn't enjoy him, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like,
I feel like in the early years of Jim and Sam, he was on a bit. bit. My other one,
Hepburn or something like that.
Yeah. Ian Halpern.
Yeah.
His Highness. Right. Hollywood Sam calls him. And the other one that I can't believe, it irks me a little bit that he's never been on Jim and Sam, because I know he loves Jim and respects Jim, and he was going on Opie and Jim a lot, is Pete Davidson. I don't know why doesn't. And Pete had this amazing story about Mike Boschetti that he gave his mom and Mike Boschetti a ride home, and Mike didn't know where he lived. Yeah, he brought him to a house where he used to live when he went to drop him off.
So. I remember that story. You know what? You just picked the quintessential guest right there in Pete Davidson.
He's super interesting and funny.
Yeah, we haven't seen him in a long time. So, yeah, I mean, this category is right there, and you got the guy that is at the top of the list right there. So, yeah, it'd be good to see Pete again.
I think so. And we were just talking about the comics. I think you have we see maybe the most even. We see those the Here's the Scenario guys with Bagalo and Mike Cannon. Then we have, speaking of guys who haven't been on in a while, is Joe List and Mark Norman. I think they're so busy touring, and I think they're busy with their own podcast. They're probably in movies and TV shows now too. They've done so well.
For sure, like Soder.
Yeah, for sure. And he's another one, Soder. But in this generation of comics, you also can put Karen in there. Karen
right.
Freeman, you Ian Fidance we talked about. Chris DiStefano hasn't been on in a while, but these are all kind of like what I think
the
of
new
as
breed.
Sam. Yeah, the new breed, exactly. Their generation. Like Opie and Anthony had the tough crowd guys, Cousin Jim, like you said. So who do you think is, I'm not even gonna say best guess, I'm just gonna say funniest, maybe overall, but especially on a show of all those types of comics?
I think it's who I'd go see if they came through town, as well as who I like on the show, and I think those go hand in hand. But Mark Norman was just fabulous with all his Seinfeld, tall tales, as Jim would say. But yeah, all his talk about being Jerry's friend or not being Jerry's friend, and Jerry liking him, and then of course he always got the ride to the airport. That's Mark's thing, and give it a goog. I just love all that stuff. But yeah, Mark, I think it was one of the best, and I just love Soder. I mean, he's so good, and all his impressions, and I just have a place in my heart for him too, because he tells some stories about growing up in Aurora, Colorado, and I'm from Colorado as well, so a lot of that same stuff applies to me that he talks about. So I think Soder's fantastic. So I'd see both of those guys when they'd come through town if they did, and sometimes it just doesn't work scheduling wise, but they're my two favorite of the new breed.
Gotcha. I think it's really interesting, maybe telling that Mark Norman and Joe List do a podcast together. They're very similar. They're both very jokey, and that's how I like my comics. I think comics should tell jokes. Stories. No matter
how dark they get, they should tell their jokes, because Mark does. I mean, Mark will throw out a tweet, and it just is hilarious. It's just a great take on something, and it's usually dark.
Yes, I think his stand-up and his interviews are funnier than on Twitter. I feel like he's always throwing stuff out there. He's he's like a joke machine. Yeah, like a joke book on Twitter. I think you could. For me, it's a toss-up. I think you can't go wrong with either guy. I think they're both really, really funny. So yeah.
Here's a question: why hasn't that young guy that all the girls like, that rolls up his shirt? I can't remember his name. He has a white T-shirt. He's a younger guy. Does a lot of crowd work. I did see him, and I'm sorry I'm forgetting his name, but I did see him at. Oh gosh, now I'm forgetting this guy's name, and there's no reason. Superfinger, SoFi, guy from Boston. Help me out.
Oh man, Boston white shirt.
No, not that guy. I'm sorry. I'm screwing this whole thing up. But Dean, Dan, Kane, gosh, forget it. Anyway, this guy hung out at. I can't remember his name. But anyway, he's a young comic, does a lot of crowd work, and is really huge on Instagram. And we haven't seen him. And I'm Dane Cook. Okay, not Dane Cook, but Dane Cook. He went to Dane Cook's premiere recently, and he was hanging out with him there. Or they're hanging out together at some premiere. But this young guy, I can't remember his name. Sorry, everyone. But
Dane Cook. That's interesting.
So he's on his way up, and he's good looking. Women like him a lot. He wears white shirts and he rolls up the sleeves. He has a pretty decent body, and he does a lot of crowd work. And if you watch,
has he been on Jim and Sam before?
No, that's why I'm saying I think this kid would be good to see. I'd like to see him on there because he's a young guy and he's pretty funny.
Okay.
Sorry, I ruined that whole segment.
No, that's all right.
Nonsense of not remembering things.
I also don't know the newer comics unless they're on Jim and Sam as much as I used to.
Yeah, but I couldn't remember Dane Cook's name. Come on.
He's interesting on Threads. New social Threads. Dane's pretty good on there. Okay, we went over the new comics. Hey, like I said, I like Joe and Mark. I think I appreciate their joke telling. They're very funny.
Right.
Give it a goog.
Get it a goog.
Now let's go back to a little bit of production. We've seen some incredible, something they do work in a lot is the man on the street bits. Maybe not as much anymore. We've been recently saying how you want more of it. I think that's fair. It hasn't been as much. But you can, look at things like Soiree at Exotica was a real crowd pleaser. Esloaf asking for penis stickers at CVS. Nico's What Would You Do for a Free Prize? And, Montone had countless amazing ones. The car show I know is a favorite of yours, Chris.
Boat show, yeah, the boat show.
The boat show.
Sure.
I'm sorry, not car
right.
show.
No,
Yes,
for sure.
So do you have one that stands out as the best man on the street bit?
Well, I always have this big place in my heart for Sam's one question, but aside from that, I really do like. I don't know why I like it because it was so stupid. Was the the what would you do for a free prize bit that he did? What does that mean?
Oh my God!
Aren't most prizes free? I mean, I've never paid for a prize.
It was absolutely amazing. It made no sense. And when people either went with it or were deserving a prize, he had nothing. Nico he had nothing. And it was so hilarious. How
about you?
I will say I think Montone might be the MVP because he's done so many good ones and he's so good at that. He's so good at like kind of writing them out.
Yeah, it's a news presentation for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Coming up with them and executing. He's probably the MVP. I think the best produced one was Soiree's because she did everything. I know Mike helped her, but she did a lot of that production herself, and it was like top to bottom, just phenomenal. Soiree at Exotica. I laughed maybe the second hardest when Mr. Loaf was asking for the Jeff Tip stickers.
Yeah.
And then I think I laughed the hardest. The funniest to me, I think, is what would you do for a free prize?
Yep.
Something we didn't touch on yet was that they were really just. I remember Sam's like, "Oh, you're just a creep." He was like, "Would you?" He was asking people to do like weird, like, "Would you show me your butt or something?" He was asking for, "Would you show your?" He was asking people weirdly weird, uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
In addition to having nothing, so that made me laugh so hard.
Poorly conceived and executed, right?
Absolutely. But allowed for a great in studio.
We enjoyed it for that reason alone. It was poorly conceived and executed. It makes for comedy for us.
Makes me laugh very hard.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that make me laugh very hard, I think throughout Opie and Anthony, certainly with Opie not welcoming Jim's characters, and obviously I'm sure he feels very free to do them on Jim and Sam, Travis. Most of the crew enjoys interacting with Jim's characters. I feel like maybe he hasn't done them a ton overall the last couple of years. Where do you think his current enthusiasm level is with doing his characters?
I think he kind of even alluded to this before, that it was something that he really relied on a lot during the pandemic and really went in deep on there. And I think he might have just overdone it then. And it's just too much, and he said he had a hard time booking the Chip episode. So, those are the reasons why he doesn't do them publicly. I think he still annoys his girlfriend at home. And of course, his manager when he can. But yeah, I don't know why he doesn't bring them to us as much. And we hear snippets of a new character, but we don't get a lot from them. So
I want more. And we tried to break the story here that Ramesh has siblings, and one is a librarian interacting with his girlfriend, hitting her hand, saying, "I told you not to talk in a library," in an English accent. So I want more. That's a great point. I honestly forgot about. He was doing so many cameos. He did that TBS show with
he did very well on that TBS show
with a character. He did very well on it. So I think he did. I think he did get burnt out on him a little bit. I still think they're hilarious. I still want to hear more. I still think there's a cartoon or a show or, obviously podcasts there. So yeah, good point. I think he got a little burnt out.
Yeah.
I think they might come back. I think his mind just goes there. He can't help it. He's a creative guy. I think hopefully after a little break, we'll be seeing more.
Yeah, and he just loves to annoy his friends.
He loves to annoy those around him.
So that's exactly where it comes from. And then what he finds real joy in is when we take those home and annoy our significant others and our friends. It's just this whole, excuse the word, but a virus, where it just keeps on spreading.
Absolutely. And one of the people who does that the most in Jim's life is his manager, Jonathan, who is a very smart, well-traveled, cultured gentleman, successful in show business, who will yell at his wife or just yell April Falls if he hears the beginning of that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't like the smell of Jim's gas. So no, that's always something to.
Doesn't sound like anyone has over the years. Sounds pretty.
No, Jim does. I know Troy has issues with it as well, and it doesn't usually make its way around to Travis. So
Troy's been a victim. Absolutely. Our last thing here, unless you have anything else to add, Chris, is I wanted to go over. it feels, we don't know everything that transpired the week they were off. We know Jim was in Austin and Karen was opening for him at Joe Rogan's club.
I do have one thing on that. I think I saw, and it was today or yesterday, that it looked like Sam was at Comic-Con in San Diego.
Wow, I didn't see that yet.
I think he was hosting something. I was trying to do a little detective work from there. And it was, I think it was some kind of like a toy, like maybe Mattel or something, some wrestling toy
last
thing.
Year too. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Mattel wrestling toys. I think you're right.
Yeah. So he was hosting something there, I think, and it was in Comic-Con. So yeah, we're going to have some good stories, I think, from their travels when they do get back. But yeah, you're right. They've been away. So, what's going to happen?
Now that you mention it, last year, I believe Sam did that kind of hosting the toy reveal for WWE with Mattel. I think it was Mattel. And he was with, as he calls the Taker, as Jim calls Under.
Yeah.
Under.
He always. And what is the main event that they have every year?
Wrestlers Mania.
Wrestlers Mania, not WrestleMania, but Wrestlers Mania. Yeah,
I love that Jim recorded a podcast, or I think it was part of the show in the ring at WrestleMania before WrestleMania with Sam. Like
it's so funny, and he always, if Sam has an event that's based on it, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll be there. It's like, no, Jim, you're not invited. Jim always gets himself there. And speaking of event, I think Sam has one coming up on August 5th in Detroit. So I'm sure Jim will invite himself to that one as well.
I look forward to that self-invitation. Speaking of invitations, what I was getting to with this week and not knowing the full extent of what everyone did and their plans, we don't know if the Duck and Goose soiree happened at Jim's place, if it's ever gonna happen.
Right.
I'll give my guess first. I'm ticked off because his 4th of July bash a few years ago was so epic, where he bought the camping chairs. The outdoor chairs for everyone that they got to take home. I don't think his Duck and Goose story is going to happen, and I feel devastated. I guess he's traveling a little bit on the road. It's kind of already later in the summer. I mean, what do you think?
I tend to agree with you. I know that Sam's traveling as well and doing things. So to get everybody's schedule to coordinate, and he's always, Jim from day one says, well, what about all these guys, all his friends who are comedians working on the weekend and stuff? So you need to do something after work, maybe on a Thursday, and it's just tough, but just do it, pull the trigger and just do it. And who shows can show and have fun. And we just want to hear the stories about it. So yeah, I think if it does happen, I feel that it could be maybe a fall thing, maybe in September. I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with that, or October.
I love September.
Little football on, have some people over, grill one burger for whoever wants it.
Yeah, because you never know.
You never know. But speaking of burgers, I think that was the highlight. That could end up being the highlight of Jim's show get-togethers, was having Soiree, her mom, and Hot Dog at his place for a burger with his girlfriend. That could have been his social.
What an odd mix of people. Yeah.
But, sitting there, what the conversation's about and where it goes.
Yeah. But it's great. I love that he is so open to have whoever come over. If he trusts them, if he likes hanging out with them, they're okay with him and his girlfriend. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. He's a great host. And so are you, Chris. And thank you for joining me. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to this Hodgepodge show. We enjoyed doing it. Hope you guys enjoyed watching and listening.
We absolutely did. And so, they're going to come back. They're going to tell us about their vacation. And they'll have every good detail. And then we'll break it down here in the town square.
Thanks for watching and listening to the Jim and Sam Town Square. Please remember to like and subscribe and turn on that notification bell, not dog bell, so you don't miss an episode.
And if you're just listening to the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate it.